All right. So, welcome everybody to our near death and spiritually transformative experiences OLLI program. And my name is Catherine Chapey, and I'm so happy to be here with all of you. And today we have a wonderful guest, and I met Courtney at the IANS conference this past year, and it was so nice to get to know her. And as soon as we were done talking, I knew I wanted to ask her to come and share her story with us at our OLLI program. So I'm so excited to hear what she has to share with us. So I'm just going to read a little bit about Courtney. Courtney Lester is a former business executive who built a thriving career before retiring as VP of Strategy and Chief of Staff to the CEO of a publicly traded financial services company. While overseeing numerous seven-figure projects, leading multiple departments, and indirectly managing over 500 employees, she realized her definition of success had to change. Always chasing the next promotion and 15% more money, she never felt happier, just busier and more stressed. A near fatal car accident later solidified Courtney's new path as she was left with a profound knowing love and relationships are what matter most, including the relationship we have with ourselves. Courtney now draws upon her own spiritual journey and corporate experiences in strategy, communication, and leadership to empower her students and clients to live more authentic and joyful lives. Courtney holds a BA in psychology from Washington University in St. Louis and an MBA from Boston College. So, welcome, Courtney. So happy you're here with us today.
Thank you so much.
So,
And
oh,
I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy you're here with us. So I can't wait to hear your story. So start wherever you feel comfortable.
So in light of your comment, I'm going to start from the beginning, and probably skip around a little bit. So feel free to kind of pull me in if you have questions or if I'm leapfrogging too much. But I do think the young experience for me does help to kind of paint some of the context and the contrast of what happened later in life. So when I was growing up, both of my parents were ministers, and I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. I went to a private Christian school. In high school, I went to 3 different services every Sunday. I went to my dad's service, one before my dad's service, and one after my dad's service at various churches around. So I was always really spiritual. When I was in 4th grade, I distinctly remember being so interested in death and the afterlife and what happens, why are we here? I was a kid that my parents would take me to these kind of like tent style revival meetings. They were Assembly of God is the closest to their type of practice. So it's very charismatic, some mystical experiences. But anyway, whenever I would go to these, like I would just sob and sob and sob. I would just be completely overloaded with spirit. In hindsight, I knew that, but I didn't know why, but it was just like just so overwhelmed. Um, when I was 8, I distinctly remember seeing this angelic being in my room. And I fought myself on this for so long, like being like, no, it's just a dream. That was a dream. That was a dream. And eventually it occurred to me of like, what other dreams do I remember from my childhood? And it's like, that's the one. So I remember that dream. And then I also remember another dream that I had of my grandfather who had been deceased at that point. Those are the only 2 dreams I remember from my childhood. So that it stood out a lot. So it was like there was this definitely a hunger that kind of stands out now that I have daughters, stands out as, more on the atypical side, but a hunger for spirituality, a hunger to know more. and especially a hunger to learn more about death and what happens and why are we here. So flash forward, my high school that I was, I went to the same school from kindergarten through 12th grade, and it was a very called selective education, to the point that we didn't learn about evolution except for why I was wrong. We also specifically were studying, this biblical point of view of the age of the earth and aging, animals and artifacts. And anyway, so I learned that the animals were here because of Noah's Ark. So later on, I went to and I was always really good at school, like just a perfectionist, hardcore, tried to be perfect at everything, and had a brain and wiring such that I was, excelled academically. So I went to this summer program for gifted students in Arkansas, not like a humble, but that's the context. It's a summer program, and it's my first time being with people that are not Christian, not fundamentalist Christian. And somehow I got asked the question point blank. I was in a science track, and in one of the classes, they asked me, so you believe all of the animals are here because of Noah's Ark? And it was like everything within me was like preparing for battle. Like I can feel like my fists like getting ready. It was like all of my upbringing has brought me to this moment where I'm going to transform this room, and I'm going to preach like I've never preached before. Like, this is it, go. And so I was preparing for this, and I said yes, with this, like, I don't know, such an intention of transformation. And then it's like, then I looked around the room, and I think that was the beginning of the end for me of this can't be it. It was such a heartbreaking time. Like I've had to do so much trauma work on this, because it's horrible when your entire worldview is ripped out from under you. And it was scanning the room. I think there was such a strong knowing in me that there was more to the story. There was more to life than what I had lived. And I remember seeing some people who were not, like approval, some people who were horrified and shocked, some people who were deeply compassionate, some people who were just like shaking their head. Anyway, I scanned the room. There were probably like 20 people and 20 different reactions. And so that really was a turning point for me. And I, didn't cope well. I spiraled into anxiety, depression, eating disorders from that, because it was so traumatic for me to lose that faith. And in the way that I was brought up, it's like if you lose your faith, not only do you lose your family, your community, you lose meaning, you lose the ability to have your mansion in heaven, like you lose your ability to have heaven. You then go to hell and you're a heretic and you're divided. So it was horrible. I went to college, couldn't walk in a church. I ended up marrying a scientist who's Serbian. So he grew up in communist Serbia. And I became pretty married to like, science is my religion. I'm never going to get duped again, was kind of the track that I was on. And then we lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is like, if that's your track, like that's a great place to be. Like you are, like you can walk around Cambridge and be like, is that a Nobel laureate? Is that a famous physicist? Like it's, if that's what you want, like it's perfect to thrive there. So I did. Of like, I wouldn't say I was flat out atheist. I think for me, it was always like it felt like it felt like wanting to believe in Santa when I was younger, of like, there's something here. I know my life would be better if this is real, but I just can't. I cannot. Um, so 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 that's what my life looked like spiritually, like really depressed, really unsure, like very destabilized, just I didn't have a foundation or a reason for thinking that my life had meaning. And professionally, what this looked like is I went to, I graduated top of my class in high school. I went to a really good college, got a great education. I then was so sensitive to just messaging around me that I became convinced that to be good enough and to have meaning and purpose, I needed to make a lot of money. So I did. I looked for the highest paying jobs I could. I I don't know if I'm proud of this or not, but it's like I started making six figures when I was, I think, 24, which is wild in hindsight. But it's like, but that was what I decided to do. I was going to muster all of my strength into being good enough. And in my head, that meant money. So I followed this path of just more and more money, like really literally chasing that 15% more and not stopping till I have it. And then once I had that, then I needed 15% more because I had a new peer group. And at some point, I found myself like I was working, I don't know, 50, 60 hours a week. I was doing my MBA part-time at night, and I had two kids. And it was like I was doing all of the perfect things perfectly. And I was so miserable. And there was, it took, so this is flash forward. So this was my life in January 2021. So I was working nonstop, so stressed out, managing multiple departments, and still all I could think about was how this other woman was making more money than I was and doing less. Like it was just like it was never going to be enough. So, and at that point, I was also pregnant with our third child. So this, so I had, I was 13 weeks pregnant at the time. It's emotional. So I was 13 weeks pregnant. This would have been in 2021, still COVID protocol. I was going in for my 13-week ultrasound by myself because you weren't allowed to bring anyone. And then we found out that there was no heartbeat.
Mhm.
And it was so sad. I mean, it was a little girl. We had a name picked out. And that was the other big event in my life of just feeling so shattered that it felt a little less scary to be honest with myself. And it was January 2021 where for the first time in my life I admitted that I didn't want to be vice president. I didn't want to be a senior vice president. I didn't want to be a chief revenue officer, which is what I had been gunning for. I didn't want that. I finally said out loud that I wanted to teach. And that put me on this whole trajectory. And I think the stress and the pain of the miscarriage, it made me finally stop ignoring pain in my body. So I had a series of kind of mystical experiences where shortly after that first miscarriage, I was doing rolfing or a body work practice, trying to figure out what this pain was that I kept hearing from my doctor and for PT was psychosomatic. So they didn't believe it would just jump around and be debilitating at times, to where I couldn't get out of bed. But it was very inconsistent. It didn't make sense. So it was psychosomatic. So I went to this body work practitioner because I was like, I'll try anything. And then he pressed this spot on my lower back. And then it's like, I just became flooded with shame and memories. And they were all of this life. It was just like everything that I had suppressed, it was like it was coming back online. And he told me, and there's more to that I could elaborate on, but that's the gist of it. And he, because of my kind of extreme experience, he referred me to his friend, an acupuncturist. So I went there next. And I remember later on, I was telling my friend about my acupuncture appointment. And I was like, yeah, so they put you on this table, and then it feels like there's screws that are in your head, and it feels like each screw is being pulled out into a string. So screw by screw, they pull strings through your head. And she was like, no, it doesn't. Like, what the hell did you, like, what the hell happened? So, um, so I can't really explain what was going on then. I think, there's some parallels with the Kundalini awakening. I've never really made too much heads or tails of that, other than like something big happened during the body work, something else big happened during acupuncture, which set me up for, at this point it was July 2021. So that's when I miscarried again. And it was the same thing, except this one was at 10 weeks. So it was 10 weeks along, no signs of miscarriage, but we go to the ultrasound and there's just no heartbeat again. And I mean, parts of the second miscarriage were easier because I had more resources, like I had been through therapy, grief counseling, but it just is like you you never stop missing, or at least for me, I never stopped missing that child. And it was after that, and I had massive hemorrhaging from a rare blood disorder I didn't know I had. It was, these were traumatic, emotionally, physically, very hard on my body. And after my second miscarriage, I was in bed journaling. Thankfully, I picked up that practice by then. And all of a sudden, this poem poured out of me. And my body, I was just like, my body was like, it's a fire that doesn't burn, doesn't hurt, but it's just like so electrifying is what it felt like. Like I could feel like everything within me like pulsing, like I don't know how to describe it. It just like felt so electrifying. And I was looking at this poem, and as you may guess, or I'll tell you based on my background, I was an analyst. I was really into math and science. My job was in strategy, data analytics, business analyst, like incredibly, I was incredibly analytical by nature. I'd never written a poem. And that was the first time I was looking at it. And I just remember thinking, and hope I can cuss, but I just remember being like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on? And then from there, I started hearing rhymes in my head. Like I literally started thinking in this like poetic ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Like it was like a distinct rhythm that sometimes I can find in certain children's books. And I'm like, I know that voice. Like I know that rhythm. It just was like so distinct and it rhymed. And I would hear words that I don't know the definitions of consciously, and I'd have to look them up. I'd have to look up words like germinated and bemoaned, bemused, like come to mind. Or sometimes it would be like very old, like ye and alas. And I don't know, it was so strange. And I just like, I didn't know what was going on. So of course I, like many, I thought I was crazy. So um, it took me a while to muster up the courage to go talk to a therapist about getting diagnosed with schizophrenia. I knew it ran in my family. I was convinced, I was like, I'm schizophrenic or I have dissociative disorders and I'm probably a danger to everyone around me. So, so she was like, no, you're not. And I was like, no, I need you to take out the DSM, which is the psychology, like the textbook that's this thick, like the diagnostic gold standard for psychology. And I was like, no, I need you to look these up. I'm schizophrenic. I have an aunt who's schizophrenic. I'm schizophrenic. Like I probably need medication. Like, and she was like, no, you're not. And I was like, okay, well then I have dissociative identity disorder. I am highly dissociative. I close my eyes and I don't even know where I am anymore. And she's like, no, you're not. So she sat there and read them to me. Like we went through the criteria and it was like, this again was 2021. So I was like, finally convinced that it wasn't a mental illness. And then I became like, oh my God, then what is this? Because I was looking and grasping for every explanation I could, because there was such a knowing that the God that I grew up with was not that, what like that wasn't real to me. And but not knowing what was real or what felt true. And I remember around this point, like kind of becoming like, I was becoming interested in near-death experiences right before my miscarriage. And there was this one line, it's so random, but there was this one line from the book Proof of Heaven by Eben Alexander, which I saw was not on the suggested list, by the way, but it is really good too. They're all good. They're all great. But there was this one line where Eben says, when he, was experiencing this ultra reality, he said he knew that he was connected to every blade of grass. And I can't tell you why, but it was like, that was the only thing in my life that felt true. Like, and it was such a strong knowing. I was listening to the audiobook and I remember stopping and it was like, like, that's it. I know that. I remember, that's it. Like, so all I had to go off, oh, and I have goosebumps. All I had to go off of that point was that I wasn't crazy and I was connected to every blade of grass. So, so then, again, I'm married to a scientist. I'm married not just a scientist, but a Harvard PhD scientist. And I was like, I'm going to study this. I'm going to make sense of this. Like, I will muster my might again and figure out what is going on. So then was a period of, I'd say, mass consumption of information. So I was probably reading about a book a week, listening to every podcast I could find, trying to like reconstruct, like kind of deconstruct what I had been taught and start to construct, like, what do I actually believe? And I, at this point, I also, so this would have been, around 2022. I was finishing my MBA finally. Well, I say, I was very part-time. I finished it in 6 years, which is right before the course credits start expiring. But I finished that, and by this time, I mean, I probably had like 100 poems, which still, I can't sit down and write a poem. I still can't. I don't know anything about poetry. I can't, like, I don't rhyme. It's not my thing. But I'm like looking at these journals full of these poems, finished my MBA, and it was in 2022, that's when I finally made VP. And this was something that I had worked my whole life for, and I definitely doubted at some level that was going to make me happy, but there was like still clinging to this hope of, well, I don't know anything else except that I'm connected to every blade of grass. So maybe everyone's wrong, and maybe as soon as I get VP, I'm going to be happy and everything's going to be fine. So I finally get this promotion that I wanted. And so not only was I VP, but I was asked by the CEO to be his chief of staff, which I had been previously chief of staff to a senior vice president. So this was like an upgrade to running my own department, upgrade in promotion, upgrade in salary, upgrade in stock options, upgrade to be the CEO's right hand, and me being like, I can, I have this power now that I can do something with. Like, I can help people, I can work on culture. And I was really like so excited. The day it was announced, like, it was constant high-fiving, I got champagne, like everything was wonderful. And then, if you can sense where this is going, it was the next day. The next day, I went to work. I sat down at my computer. I realized I was not any happier than before when I wasn't a VP. And I began another huge dark night of the soul. So I put my calendar on do not disturb. I canceled every meeting I had. And I was like, they probably think I'm really important now and have other things to do as a new VP. But it was like, nope, I was just going to cry on the floor is what I was doing. I went for a walk and I started what I believe is channeling this, like, what it was called. It was the branding of names has never been my thing, or maybe it hasn't been given to me, but I started putting together this framework called consciousness-based healing of perfectionism. And I was given 3 tools as my foundation. One was gratitude. It was explained to me as somewhat of an accelerant. The second was awareness or meditation. And specifically it was self-awareness, but it was it's hard to describe it. It's kind of introduced to me as the concept of self-awareness. The tool that I will use is meditation. And then the third element was self-compassion. And then there were other things. And I remember I was like sitting there on my computer in Visio, and I was, you know, moving things around and creating these flow charts around it. So I took that, I took that framework, and then I started building out a curriculum around it. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I started like building a course called Leadership for Perfectionists, because clearly I wasn't going to be staying at my job. So who cares? Why not give in and just see where this takes me, was kind of the feelings that I had had. So I started building that out. And eventually, about 6 months later, I mean, my body was just like, it was shutting down. I like was finding myself, I was sick all the time, just so sick all the time. I'd get a cold and then get bronchitis. Then I got pneumonia. I got laryngitis. I was sick for like the next 6 months as I was fighting leaving this corporate world. And I had asked my my boss, then the CEO, if I could take a few weeks off, like as a bit of sabbatical. And he was amazing and so supportive. And he said yes. And it was the outcome of that was like, I know I can't stay. I don't know where I'm going, but I know at this point enough to listen and follow. And I want to see where this takes me. I want to see where this writing takes me. During that month of sabbatical was the first time I ever asked God, or, you know, spirit source, the one, the uncreated, whatever. But I asked God to write with me and through me. And I couldn't believe what was coming up. So I decided to leave my job, put in my notice. Everyone around me, like, they already thought I was crazy. I thought I was crazy. And definitely I was being crazy by leaving my cushy job that was in strategy and revenue specifically, with no strategy and no revenue. So I left that world. And then this brings me to, so this is like all kind of, I feel like my life is one big spiritually transformative experience, but this brings me to my more maybe cookie cutter near fatal experience, where a few months after this, so I left my job at the end of January 2023. On May 5th, just gonna do a time check real quick. Okay, yeah, I'm good. On May 5th, 2023, I was driving on the highway, ironically, to volunteer at a poetry conference that I heard about because someone sat in the wrong seat next to me on an airplane. And then
What kind of
we got to
conference was
talk.
it, Courtney?
Oh,
Courtney?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, what kind of conference was it? It went fuzzy. So,
Oh, it was a Massachusetts poetry convention.
oh, okay. All right, go
And
ahead.
I was driving there to volunteer at this poetry convention. And I had only found out about the poetry convention from someone who accidentally sat next to me on an airplane. So it was like, so I was driving to this poetry conference, and there was this, I mean, kid, he was 25 in this little sports car. I remember it's a white BMW sports car, like a 2-door, just flying on the highway. He was going about 100, and he hit me straight into, or he hit me from the back right, and he hit me right into a concrete wall. So it was under an overpass. and he was just, flying just as he was, and he hit me into the wall. And I remember everything went black, and it's this massive explosion. Like I can, like, the sound is so distinct and it's so loud. And I remember like looking at the wall as I'm about to hit it. And there were three thoughts that I know I had. And there was a lot between them, but I remember thinking, what is going on? Like just being so disoriented, and then being like, this can't be happening, as I'm wrapping my head around, okay, I must have gotten hit. And then the third thought was, am I going to get an ENDE? And I was excited, which is so funny to me in hindsight. It was like, what's going on? This can't be going on. This must be how I get an NDE. And I've unpacked this series, and it was so, I mean, it's interesting to me for many reasons, but it was like, there was 100% a knowing that I wasn't going to die. Even though like, I'm like, I'm in this experience, it's like I'm watching in slow motion my consciousness where I am, like I'm watching me about to hit this wall, excited about an NDE because I knew I wasn't going to die, and I knew that there was something out of this, like that there was meaning in it. So the next thing, so then it's like, I don't know, I lose consciousness, it's all a big blur. And then based on the car and kind of what I experienced of like being thrown around, I hit the front of my car on the wall. I spun and hit the back of my car again on the median. And then I was flying backwards and regaining consciousness, because it was, it was like one boom, two boom, like, like this, and then being flown backwards. And I'm like regaining consciousness, and I hear, brake, Courtney, brake. Put your foot on the brake. Brake, Courtney, brake. Put your foot on the brake. Brake, Courtney, brake. Put your foot on the same thing over and over and over, until finally it's like things are computing again between my brain and my body to realize that I'm flying backwards with my foot gunning it, like on the gas, flying backwards, looking into traffic. And then it's like, then it hits me like, oh, I know what a brake is. I know what a brake is. And so I move my foot to the brake, and then everything stops. And as I stopped, I was trapped in the car. So this car was so badly damaged, I couldn't get out. There was smoke in the air because the other car was on fire. And one of the reasons, I mean, there's many reasons why I know that this was for me and not just some horrific coincidence. But one of the reasons was the car that had been behind me, it turned out they were one of those big like energy utility vehicles. So I'm facing the wrong way in oncoming traffic, and they pull up right in front of me and put on their signs, their blinkers, to direct people to the outer lanes so that people can go around me. So I'm trapped in the car, and cars are going around me. And then I see this, so much. I see this woman running towards me, and it turned out she was a firefighter, and she stuck her hand in the car, and she held my hand the whole time, and she organized the witnesses for me. Like she organized everything at the scene. She worked with the paramedics. She told me she had seen that car flying, and she knew he was going to hit somebody, and that then it happened. And it just like, I mean, she was such an angel. I've like had that thought of like, wait, was she real? Was she really human? And I don't know. I mean, I think she was. I think, the universe can work through all of us, but she was my angel. And I just, the rest of that, it was horrific. recovering from that. Not, I mean, it was amazing because I survived. It was amazing because I had been kind of pre-warned about some of it, kind of going back to the pieces in hindsight. A couple days before the accident, I had heard very strongly that I didn't understand I need to be practicing yoga nidra. And finally like got around to asking somebody about it who told me like some resources. I didn't know how to practice it. I just knew I needed to practice yoga nidra. And so it was 4 or 5 days before my accident. 2 nights before my accident, my iPad started randomly playing a yoga nidra meditation at 5:22 in the morning. And it stood out to me because I was like, my birthday is 5/21. This isn't a sign. like you got the wrong time, or this isn't anything. And then I just started like powering off my iPad at night because I didn't want it to go off again. But it's never done that before, never done that since. And what was so distinct to me is that after my accident, I walked out of the hospital that day, got in the car, and it was 5:22. And I knew, I mean, I was so grateful to be alive. And I felt like for the first time, it's so sad, but for the first time in a long time, I really, really wanted to be alive. I really, really wanted to be here on earth. There was always a part of me, not always, but I think, spirituality can be a coping or, an escapism of sorts. And it was so just painful to navigate life as me, that there was a part of me that's like, I'm convinced now if there's a heaven, it's better than this. Like, I'd rather be there because this sucks. This is too hard. And after the accident, that was my big, I don't think it technically qualifies as an NDE because I had that complete awareness that I was not going to die. I think I kind of negated some of what that NDE experience is like, but it was certainly an STE for me. And after that, I was just like, oh my God, I'm never going back to corporate work, am I? Like, I had spent all this time negotiating a consulting rate because I thought I was going to go back. I thought I was going to apply for PhD programs, but still consult. And after that happened, I was like, I'm not going back. I don't, it became so clear that what I wasn't even chasing, it wasn't money. It was a feeling of security. And it was thinking that more money was going to give me that security. It was just that feeling of something's wrong. I'm not safe. And thinking money is the security and validation that I need to feel like I'm good enough or worthy enough. And the other big, I mean, there's a lot that I learned through that, but the other big one was I felt my heart later asking me, in that moment where I'm looking at the wall in slow motion, I'm seeing myself get closer and closer and closer. There was a question of what mattered to you then? What mattered? And I realized what mattered most by far, by a landslide, like not even close. What mattered most to me was I wanted to be here to raise my children. What mattered secondarily to that was I wanted to grow old with my husband. I wanted to be with my kids. I wanted to be with him. And then as I started to unpack it, like what mattered about my old professional life, like what mattered at work, it was like what mattered, well, maybe it's easier to explain the contrast. What mattered to me then was I wanted to get the best jobs. I wanted to get the most money. I wanted to get, the elite projects. I wanted the accolades. I wanted the awards. I wanted to be like getting these 40 under 40 awards where I was like runner up and I was pissed that I wasn't officially 40 and whatever. Anyway, I wanted to get all of that. And it was funny because when I was facing the wall, and I can always go back there. It's always like, it's like, not like a portal, but it's always something that I can go back to that moment of time whenever I want and ask questions to myself then and access that wisdom. And when I was reflecting on my career, it's like what mattered to me. It was the relationships. And they mattered so much. It was not that my work didn't have meaning. It did, like it, but it was meaning in terms of um like experience, like experiential learning. Um, but what absolutely was like unquestionably important was how I treated every single person, even my, in the past, like I wouldn't call her a nemesis at all. I'd call her a teacher now, but but in the past, my nemesis who was making more than I was, even though she was doing less and everybody knew, but it's like the relationship with her mattered. I was, I'm seeing like in my head, like these like temporary interns that I was mentoring, like, oh, they mattered so much like to me in that, well, like just like that ability to give what I know and to help when I can. Like that's what I took from that. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, many things, but that's that knowing that that Catherine you mentioned of like that was the profound knowing of what matters most is love and relationships, including the relationship we have with ourselves. It was the relationship with my body. It's funny because I mean I'm not, I'm like almost 40. I grew up in the 90s where it was like stick thin. You're either stick thin or you're fat. And I, had struggled for a long time with eating disorders after that existential crisis that I mentioned. And it was interesting because there's like, I didn't care that my belly flaps over my pants. Like, what? Like, it's just like my body is my partner. Like, this body keeps me alive so that I can be here to love. And it's like all of that worry about my body. I mean, it still comes back because I'm still so human and you can't live at the wall. It's like that's not the point either, but just to take the wisdom and bring it here. But yeah, it was all about relationships. Like that is all that mattered. And it still is all it's like I think it's so common with anybody who's and I have more I have more STEs after this one, um but it's so common of like your values change and things just melt. And now, I mean, I'm hoping to make next year, I'm hoping to make 10% of what I made in the past. And it's like, I just keep thinking of like, I'm the Lord's Prayer, like, give us today our daily bread, like that. It's like, I know more than that. It's not going to make me happier. And I want to spend as much time as I possibly can just loving on people. Like I just, I want to spend that time with my kids. I did get my rainbow baby, which was a whole other story. I got my rainbow baby. I have a 1 year
Oh,
old.
oh my goodness. When was that? When did you get your little baby?
She turned one a few days ago.
Oh
So
my,
on the 19th, she turned one.
that is so wonderful.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. Thank you. So yeah,
Wow.
so that's how I live, that's how I live my life now. I need enough to have my office because I need my space and I need time, and private space for things like this.
Mm.
Um, and just enough. Like that's what I want is just enough.
Wow. I am so, you're bringing me to tears with your little rainbow baby. That is so wonderful. What a perfect way to to close this beautiful story. And Courtney, and I know you could share so much more with us, but we're running out of time. But I know I just have a feeling you'll come back with for other talks in the future. So maybe we'll get to hear more about your STEs, your other STEs. But yeah, wow, what a beautiful story. And it's so funny and it's so timely because last week we had Dr. Yvonne Cason on, and she actually did a really beautiful PowerPoint presentation about all the different types of STEs and how people, experience STEs. And one of the questions and one of the things she talked about and her new book that's coming out is about people that experience STEs through life changes, right? Different traumatic things that happen in their life where they're not actually having an NDE, but they're having these breakthroughs and also by hearing others like NDE stories, and that helps to open them up to, or listening to people's STE transformations, and that helps them in their own life to have a switch and a change in the way that they view the world, and then they start having STEs. So it's really wonderful, and it's part of the ripple effect. I call it the ripple, right? And we have no way of knowing how our stories will change other people's lives, but they do, and it's so valuable to share these stories and what you've learned. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for everything you're doing, and
No, thank
just
you.
wonderful, wonderful. So I wrote down a couple little stars, or a few things actually. Let's check a
Sure.
few things. So let me go back to the beginning. Um, oh, this was really so as you were in the car and you were spinning around and everything, so your foot must have stayed on the gas and you were gunning, right? You said you were pushing,
Mhm.
but you kept hearing, brake, Courtney, brake, put your foot on the brake, like over and over again, right? And at that point, was everything kind of distorted in that? Because I know when sometimes when we have trauma, things kind of slowed down. Did you feel like there was something happening with time at that point, so that you were able to get that message and be able to move your foot, like consciously move your foot onto the brake? Was that something that you were experiencing at that time, or?
It was, yeah, you're onto something there, but I haven't been able to articulate or put my finger on like how time seemed to work then.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seemed to be that I was somehow fully conscious and fully unconscious. And there were some parts that were slow motion and some parts where it felt like everything happened in an instant. Like I don't know.
There was like a warp for sure, like
It,
something was different in that.
something was I've never experienced time like that before or after.
Hmm.
Um, so I know that a lot happened um, during that experience, but I don't know of it. But it was like, and I worked with ChatGPT later to deconstruct my accident, and I was like uploading pictures of it. And my husband's a physicist, so he was like, you couldn't have hit the wall at this angle. You had to be this other angle because the parallel motion and this, he was like drawing it out. And then I just uploaded that into ChatGPT and they were like, yeah, your husband's right. So anyway, but what I can tell is that is that the other car hit me exactly right. If it
Yeah.
had hit me more straight, it would have been a lot worse because a lot of the force was getting worked out through me spinning,
Right.
which was softer on my body than alternative. So it's like it was perfectly organized to optimize, like to like create a condition in which I survive. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my car was the worst one on the lot by far. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I do remember kind of the spinning, and I can, like, I know in hindsight, based on like at what point I resumed ability to control my body, like when that connection, that mind body connection came back online, I realized my foot was one, like fully pressing the gas as I was flying in reverse. I was
Mm-hmm.
looking, but this is also a miracle because I was going straight in reverse. I don't even know how that's possible. Because I was exactly looking at oncoming traffic going straight down the middle lane. That's when I was hearing the voice as I was
Wow.
hurling straight. And I
Wow.
don't know how many times I said it. It was over and over and over and over until I could like regain control, that I had a body, regain control of what a break was, like that it was all an instant and it was also slow motion.
Right. Right. And at one point, did you say you were viewing the accident from out of your body? Were you seeing it at the same time that you were in it? Or did I or
I
did I
I
misinterpret?
I wasn't. I was, I
You were
was,
in
I was in my body. Because
okay,
I remember like looking at the wall, looking at oncoming traffic. So my viewpoint was from my like eye point.
okay. All right, thank you. And then I have one more question. Okay, so now you were questioning your sanity at a certain point when you started to get those rhyming poems and everything. And you were asking, was this a therapist? You were telling her that you wanted to be, um, you wanted her to do an analysis on you to see if you had schizophrenia. And this was a psychotherapist that you went to at the time? Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I want to carry on by when you said because you thought you were crazy then. I'd say like that those are still challenges that I have because I still, have had so much life experience rooted in material sciences, like literally being married to a material scientist. It's like I still, and that's part of, I think, yeah, I think that's all intentional. It's like it's working through these experiences for me that I cannot explain, and knowing the data says it's much more reasonable to believe that these are, truly divine interventions in my life. And I still, have those moments of fluctuation where I'm like, this is insane.
Mm.
So that's my caveat of like, it wasn't just then. I still go through those moments.
Right.
And then to your other point, I had been seeing a trauma therapist. I had been seeing someone for EMDR therapy, if
Yes.
you guys are familiar with that, the rapid eye movement.
Mhm.
And ironically, she had just gone through, it was called EMDR 2.0 the weekend before my accident. So
Oh,
when I showed up there, we were able to do accelerated trauma work on my car accident, which I mean, it was just a miracle having so much trauma from that event that I could have, 50% of it lifted in one session because of her 2.0 training.
oh, wow. Wow. So you were seeing a really good therapist because some therapists may have, you know, decided that you needed to be on some kind of because that still happens today, right? People
Oh,
are told they're having a psychotic break or they need to be on medication or this is psychosis. So it's really good that you were seeing the right person at the time. Yeah, that really supported you and what you were going and had understanding of these kind of experiences. Wonderful.
absolutely.
All
And
right.
I see Maria's hand is raised.
Yes, I know. I'm going to open
Oh,
it the room now for questions. And Maria, come on in.
Hi, I'm sorry, your first name again is
Courtney,
Courtney. How old are you? Do you mind me asking?
not at all. I I'm like, I think I'm 39. Yes, I am 39. I forget.
The reason I'm asking is looking around, you'll see we're all older here. And I am just very impressed with how you have managed your life.
Oh,
Um, and it moved me from what you told me about the fundamental, the training that you had. And some people would call it brainwashing. Other people will call it genuine. I don't know. But I found that moment when you were in college to be quite a shattering moment for you. So that I respect you for that. My question to you is, have other people noticed in you a change? Or have you always been able to manage whatever your outward appearance and your body, you were talking about your looks, but I'm talking about your behaviors, like you're changed from the rat race more or less to someone who is kind of getting in touch with her feelings. I'm wondering how other people have perceived this change, whether gradual or sudden. I want to know if you could tell me a little about that.
yeah, absolutely. I think to your point and kind of what you picked up on, I have been really good at managing myself around anybody that I've ever been around. I've always been really empathic, really intuitive, huge people pleaser and had these advanced skills about how do I please you to where you think I'm great. So I think I was always coming across incredibly high functioning, even though like inside I was always on the point of a nervous breakdown, which is why I kept having pain that would pull me out for about a day and a half. And to the point of like, have people noticed the transformation? I think my husband would be the person closest to watching all of the, like, I'm just picturing all of the roller coaster with neither of us having paradigms and wondering like, what does this mean for us? Am I gonna like, you know, am I gonna suddenly like, I don't know, move to Tibet or yeah, I don't know what he thought, but I think the transformation is so real and it starts off gradual. Like I remember the first time, like after I'd been meditating for a while, the first time I encountered a bee, and I've had anxiety, high startle response my whole life. But this time I looked at the bee and I didn't move and I even thought it was cute. And then my husband was like, "Who are you?" And then another time that I saw a rat, which I would have screamed. And I like, this was early on too, like, you know, as I was starting to make these changes, I looked at the rat and I said, no, no, we're eating. And it turned around and went the other way. And he was like, no way. And then, so I think there were like these gradual things. And then it would be like these other moments where, you know, he was thinking about accepting this chair position in his department. And I was like, no, babe, don't do it. You're not going to like it. Why? Like, that's not what you love. And he was like, who are you? So I think the changes are quite evident. I've had people in my life, even that I met a few years ago, I'm like, they can't believe, I feel like they, to me, I seem like a different person than I was, you know, pre-accident. So anyway, I think it's, I mean, to me, I feel totally different. And I do think the ripple effect, to your point, is there. And it's obvious to my family, my husband, my in-laws. Not everybody approves, of course. Like some people disapprove, you know, to the extreme, but but the change is there.
And that's okay.
Yeah,
Right?
it's still a process. Like for me, that's a lot of my life's work is having that love for myself and that validation for myself and not having to constantly prove to me. It doesn't come to anyone else or come from them nearly as much as it comes from me.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for your good question, Maria. Appreciate it. All right. All right. So I'm going to bring Fred in.
Courtney, thank you so much for your powerful story. You're an inspiration. My question is the break you made between your very strong religious upbringing and then the transition, which seemed almost immediate, into the secular world. Not only, and it seemed to me that you totally dismissed now your spiritual upbringing once you had this discovery about, well, the world that is. But what I find curious is not only did you just dismiss it, you became materialistic, you became so secular, power driven by your materialism, where you had to keep out producing yourself, and then taking on the scientific world, marrying a PhD scientist. So I'm wondering also, though, with some of the revelations and insights you've had in your spiritual experiences, might some of these have gone back to your background of the spiritualism you had growing up? I mean, or have you totally dismissed that now?
Great
Oh,
question,
it's
Fred.
such a good question. There's so much to unpack there. I feel like I could talk again just on this concept of like kind of bridging these two worlds, having those lived experiences as like, I'm going to use this extreme, but when I was growing up in my school, it was so evangelical, fundamentalist, Calvinist or predestinationist that even Mother Teresa was going to hell because she was Catholic. So it was like, I had that, and I had this feeling of like, that can't be true. That can't be true. I even like dressed like Mother Teresa in a book report that I did in 6th grade because I thought she was so amazing. And, you know, in my school, like there was no mother, there was no divine feminine. There was, so it's like, you know, there were parts of it that felt so wrong to me when I heard she was going to hell by the students and the teacher in one of my classes. I bawled because there was something that had that such a strong recognition of that cannot be so. So it's like taking, you know, it's the phrase, it's don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I will say, and you're right, I may need to go back to when I met Jesus, because my life got a lot easier after my other STE with Jesus. And suddenly, I don't know, the language that I could use changed, the way that I could talk to my parents changed, the compassion with which I view both worlds changed. And now, I mean, it's like, yeah, there's of course wisdom and value in whatever upbringing, whatever paradigm you have, like even if it's just to show you the contrast later in life. So I know that the way I grew up was completely intentional and serves me today as I can bridge into fundamentalism with the knowing that God is love, not metaphorically, like God is love. And to me, Jesus is so real. Actually, let me show you something. I'll show you what I have. I have 2 paintings in my office. I have this one of Jesus, which is by an 8-year-old named Akian. If you haven't heard of this one, this is a good story for another time. And then I have the mother, which is a story for another time too, of like the divine mother that was always with me, but I never knew about so much later in life.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers it, but yeah, I think for me, I'm such a skeptic and such a mystic that I had to be in those worlds to both the very devout Christian faith I grew up in and the completely agnostic, atheist, scientific world. I had to be in both of those for me to know what my world really is.
Yeah. To bring you back to your own center, right? That's how that's kind of what I was feeling with you. It's like you had both extremes and now you're like right back in who you truly are, which is beautiful.
And to
Beautiful.
love and value people who are in both camps.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
There's not the animosity anymore on either side. There's some things that I certainly, you know, I don't claim that I understand. You know, the full spectrum of humans in both camps, you know, like left, right, spiritual, atheist, like I don't understand all of these nuances, but I certainly have a different kind of compassion from living in those extreme lines.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Fred. Great questions.
Great question.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have anything they want to say to Courtney or ask, or any insights or gratitude, anything you want to say? All right. Looks like we have a quiet group. All right. So I just want to look over my notes real quick and see. I love how you were able to go back into that moment, right? When you were hitting or like you were spinning and getting ready to hit that wall, and then you are able to know those things that were happening within your consciousness that were important to you. Like, what were you thinking about at that moment, the things in your life that were important to you, about what mattered most? And the things that mattered was about raising your children, being here for your children, right? And growing old with your husband. And with your career, it was the relationships that you had with people. That was the most important thing. So yeah, and love, relationships, and relationship with self. So you're bringing in these different aspects of what's really, really important and true, in life. And those are things I think that people look back on when they're on their deathbed, and when they're in their when they do pass over and they have their life review. Those are the things that they're reviewing, how they navigated those things. So that's so important that you brought that up.
If I could speak to that, because I will say, I think about death a lot more than the average bear, always have, as long as I can remember. And some of that really lent itself to strategy. And I want to take one step back here of when I was working on a strategy, I kind of use this like seesaw metaphor of where am I right now? Where do I want to be? Which is the end of the seesaw that's up. Like, what does good look like? And then you reverse engineer, how do you get there? And then you figure out the next step. So when I was thinking about one of the many times I was thinking about death and what's, and why am I here and what's next, that thought train, I realized how do I want to define success was I want to die at peace. To me, at that point, that when I didn't know what was next, but it was like, that was the end point. I didn't know about like, next go around in this sojourn, whatever, but it was, I want to live without regrets. I want to be at peace. And then I started researching, well, what's a good death then? So I came across, this palliative care nurse, Bronnie Ware, which you may have heard of, may not have, but she interviewed many people, end of life, and found kind of these top 10 regrets of the dying. And the first one was, I wish I had the courage to be me.
Mm.
And oh my God, once I figured that out, I was like, okay, well then I'll do that. And then I was like, well, who the hell am I then? Like, what am I supposed to do with that? So then I think that's a lot of that, to love yourself. You kind of have to study yourself, and
Yeah.
it takes a while, but I think that's been very much a guiding light for me. That's what I want. That's what I want to do. Is I came here to be me, not not to be, I don't know, Oprah or like, an athlete, which I wouldn't be, I'm not like the poet, like I'm not like, I'm just Courtney, and that is wonderful and enough. And getting in touch with what are my strengths, what are my values, has made a lot of that difference. And eventually, things become pushed to the forefront that you need to know, in my experience, but a lot of it was that study of self.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so important because I'm always encouraged by my higher guidance just to be myself. Like don't worry about it, just be you. And when we're all just being who we are, that's when, that's when magic happens, right? And that's when doors open. And I wanted to say also that one of the books on the suggestive reading is Dying to Be Me by yeah, by
That's my
Amy.
favorite one.
Yeah, and that's her whole thing. She was trying to please everybody else, trying to please her parents, trying to please her husband, trying to please everybody but her, and she got so sick. And that was
Mhm.
her biggest lesson through her NDE. And then she, when she survived her cancer, I mean, I'm not going to give the whole thing away in case anyone hasn't read the book, but what a powerful, powerful story and
Who's
message.
the scribe? Who was the author? Who's the author?
Yes. This is called Dying to Be Me by Anita Morjani, and it's on the email that I just sent out. It's in the
Oh,
recommended reading. And Courtney, I'm glad that you brought up Eben Alexander's book because I'm going to add him to the suggested reading now that you brought him up because yes, that was another very powerful book. I didn't want to overwhelm everyone, but no, that'll be in there too for our next email. So
Yeah, no, I agree with your short list. I think
yeah,
Anita's is the one that
yeah.
that's the most special to me. The other one that I really love, it's like a really quick read, but oh, is that reversed for you guys? Anyway, it's The
Oh no.
Life After Death by Vinnie Tolman.
Okay.
I love
Yeah.
it too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for that. All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been amazing. Oh, did you have a question, Fred? Let me bring you
Not,
in.
not a question, but relative to having to be ourselves. There's a simple quote, I forgot who said it, and the quote says, be yourself because everybody else is already taken.
That's right. I love that. Yes. Perfect. Perfect way to end our beautiful our beautiful gathering today. And thank you, Fred. I appreciate that. All right. Well, I just want to say, Courtney, this has been fantastic. And I just love your story, everything about you. From the second I met you, I'm just going to tell you guys real quick. I'm walking through this big room and I hear Courtney talking about the mother, the divine mother, and I just hear her say the mother. And all of a sudden, I'm just pulled to her. I just, for some reason, know that I have to say hello to Courtney. And so I did, and we had a beautiful conversation, and my heart and her heart just connected right away. And I just felt just
Absolutely.
goosebumps, you know?
I,
So,
yeah,
yeah, such a blessing to
yeah.
me, to everyone here. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing your heart with us and your wisdom and your beautiful self. And we so appreciate you. Thank you, Courtney.
Thank
And
you
thanks
so
for
much. Thanks
everyone
for
for
having
being
me.
here.
The feelings were completely mutual.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Courtney. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Have a great
Bye.
one. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.